that we face. And the cartoon on the Daily Nation today, on page 14 of the Daily Nation, we have a caricature of the former retired Chief Justice William Mutunga seemingly walking away from the new Chief Justice David Maraga and telling him, just lay that thing, comrade. And we have corruption there, which is a huge, humongous animal that you're not even sure the new CJ is able to handle. Is it too big for any one individual to actually fight?
Just what we need is goodwill. And I can tell you, Fred, I'm really considering applying to be the chair of the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, or just being
the job that no one else wants.
Yes, a judicial officer somewhere. You know, the day a judge will decide that a person found corrupt is being executed in public at Uhuru Park at 1 p.m., whether or not it is in the law, nobody will touch our money again. But let me say something. Let me say something. And I will not give you time to appeal. I will deliver my judgment at noon, and I will say at Uhuru Park, I want you there with a firing squad, and I will supervise it.
The president also suggested that probably that is what you want.
Yes, by the way, if you look at all countries where corruption is subdued, go to India, go to the Muslim Arab countries, what do? You go to Saudi Arabia, or you go to Dubai across here, 1 p.m. comes and the bell rings and people leave jewelry shops, gold shops and everything open. Nobody cares touching. Why? Because you are caught, your limb is chopped off. And it is known. We must reach a level where the penalty, the pain for a person who is stealing our money is so much, and the shame accompanying it is so much that it deters you from stealing. Okay. But let me say something about, this caricature. You know, Fred, Judge Mutunga did very well at many levels. But I can tell you, Judge Mutunga could not fight corruption because he was an outsider to the judiciary. He did not understand it.
Are you saying that Maraga is an insider? He'll be better placed to...
In fact, because, Maraga understands the role of lawyers, having been a lawyer, a practicing lawyer in the law courts. How do lawyers purvey corruption in the corridors? The Maraga, having been a High Court judge and a Court of Appeal judge, understands how do judges and magistrates create networks to undertake corruption. What is the role of the judicial supporting staff in the chain of corruption? I can tell you, my brother, there are so many cases where you blame a judge or a magistrate for corruption, yet it is just a judicial staff stealing money from people pretending he's taking them, elsewhere. So we, for one, have an insider, a person who knows the workings around corruption, a person who can take a judgment and say that really this thing cannot be explained on law. In fact, there must have been some extra. So I hope it will work.
Without talking about individuals, one person cannot deal with corruption. Corruption must be dealt with, like I said earlier, from the top to the bottom. And it has to start somewhere. And I think we Kenyans have to start looking at ourselves and avoid being corrupt right from the beginning. Because this corruption is not going to go away because Maraga is now there. William Mutunga has given him, handed it over to him, but he can't do it alone. The president cannot do it alone. The institutions, everybody must work together in unison.
Fred, this is a wrong idea. But you must work together. There must be a leader of anything. We cannot say
there is a leader.
We cannot say this function is for everybody, as she is saying. We must say the president should lead. And then we follow.
The actual question is can one person sort out corruption?
Yes.
And I say no.
But can one person
lead? Cannot. I think one person can lead.
Correct.
I think we need to put this in perspective. Even if Kaluma today is the chair of EACC or is even the CJ, this issue that he can order a firing squad, he knows perfectly well it is not possible.
It is not practical.
Because we also must not pretend that we were not in the constitution making process. The one thing we were trying to get away with this constitution is that one person having everything. And that is why we created institutions, and we created and actually the issue of separation is repeated every day. So we must not pretend that we are not a part of this constitution. You cannot shoot anyone on corruption. In fact, even the death sentence, you have seen guys appealing on the death sentence because we don't do that anymore. And I think we cannot take our country back there. We must agree that there is no time we will revert back to a shooting squad. I don't see us
Senator,
moving forward. Let me talk about there is no single person who can deal with corruption.
It's not possible.
It is not possible. Our institutions are really doing different works and are in different mandates.
And our institutions must be empowered.
We must have a synergy.
Our institutions must be empowered.
I agree with Kaluma. The goodwill to fight, and it has to come from everyone. Even Maraga, you know, when CJ Mutunga got at the helm of the judiciary, there was very high hopes. He had been seen fighting corruption as a social person out there. He had been seen to be in the forefront of fighting corruption, and we expected, and many did, that having been in the NGO world, he will come and put some energy that we had missed from the people who are inside. Right now we are going back to someone who is inside. So I really, but even the change of guard before
I want to say that these institutions must be empowered. You cannot have one person trying to say that I am the leader of institutions that are dead. Institutions that are not allowed to function. Institutions that are not allowed to work. We cannot give the responsibility to the president to work with people who are not working or who do not have the power. So they must be empowered.
Wrap it up for us.
I think, Fred, let's just say this. You see, we are going to institutions, but I have poignantly been able to observe, and rightfully so, that institutional integrity is equal to individual integrity in that institution.
That is true.
Correct. So let us not hide our institutions. They cannot work if the person at the helm of that institution is corrupt. Now, I have had this conversation with former CJ himself, and we were bemoaning the reality of being in government. And you know, you come in as a change agent, Peter, and then you realize there is so much you can do. So it's not looking at the global picture, because then you become disillusioned. I think it's a question of creating a pathway. You know, creating pathways of how to fight corruption. And I go back to Wangari Maathai's hummingbird, principle. Starting little, providing, ways in which you can fight corruption, ways in which you can uphold institutional integrity through the honoring of individuals. You know, and honoring culture and exalting those who are actually living a life of integrity. I ask myself this question because you've got to make a decision as a leader, whether you want to primitively accumulate and become very, very affluent, or you want to pursue a cause and change is all done to you. That is what we need. We need leaders who are committed to bring this change and who will say that this is what is enough for me. What is the benefit? And I think I've had conversations with even people like Chris Okemo, people who are finance ministers, and we're talking about the Jersey Island thing with Sam Gishuru. It all boils down to who do we glorify in this country. If today I am seen not to be giving handouts in Ruiru,
you won't get votes.
I will not get votes. If, for example, I have my friend Daniel Gashirero. Daniel Gashirero has a tuk-tuk. He gives it to a driver. Then the driver steals things and runs away with it. He reports the person. In fact, he takes the person literally to the Kimbo police station. Then the guy is released. Then when he goes back, he's told, go and bring the person back again. Is that really the reality of Kenyans? So let us just accept ourselves one thing. We cannot say that one individual cannot change the country, because there must be a leader for everybody. And by the way, that I agree. Even for us in our own personal spaces, we provide evidence to the contrary of that which we are trying to fight against. However, our value systems, I still go back to that. What do we look out for in this country? We cannot have doublespeak. On one end of the mouth, we are talking about having a clean society. On the other hand, the people who are elected are the most corrupt.
We need to move on to another story.
Let us empower institutions, as she has said. Let me say our governance institutions are operating at a very low level. Let us allow their independence. Let us have serious people in them. Let us then allow them the space without intimidation to do their work, without thinking who am I pleasing or not. Number two, I want us to engage in a lot of civic education. You know, Fred, if you remember what NAC did when it immediately came in, before we fell back to the evil trap of corruption, citizens would arrest police officers collecting bribe. Citizens would say, and pick you and from march you to a police station if you're engaging in a moral wrong. This is where we want to go back to. The sovereignty of the people. When you see a person is engaging in corruption, what do you do? I'm very sad that my brother and sister are saying that you have to bribe voters to vote for you. You'll be told that voters will deal with you as a leader based on the idea you give them about yourself. I'm one leader who has no money for people, and I tell them my salary is for me, my wife, and my children, and they understand you that way. And I can tell you, Fred Muli, in my constituency, I think I'm one of the most. popular MPs we have in Kenya.
Okay.
I'm nearly guaranteed that.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about something else, because now this story, I'm still feeling as helpless as when we began this discussion.
We have not moved.
Still no solution to the problem that we face. Now the other headline, and as I said when we started, most of the headlines today have to do with remarks and declarations made yesterday, especially by the President at Kenyatta Stadium, Machakos, during the Mashujaa Day celebrations. And the other headline on the front page of the Standard is, down there at the bottom, Uhuru omits Jaramogi Raila from first and second Liberation Heroes list.
Yeah.
Now this is another talking point, of course, the debate on on whether or not the people we are honoring are the real heroes. Has the meaning changed? Who are we honoring between when it used to be Kenyatta Day and now that it has become Mashujaa Day? Are we still honoring the same people? Has the term hero in terms of our national heroes changed? So despite honoring many heroes and heroines during yesterday's 7th Mashujaa Day celebrations, President Uhuru Kenyatta noticeably left out 3 iconic men whose contribution to Kenya's struggle is irrefutable. The names of Kenya's founding Vice President Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, Kenya's second Prime Minister Raila Odinga, and former Minister Tom Mboya were missing from the list of Kenya's heroes. Remember, he even mentioned Martha Karua, he mentioned James Orengo, yet Raila Odinga missed.
Yeah.
Did you notice that?
Let me say something in the mood. You know, I was in Machakos, and it was really a joyous moment to be actually having. I was sitting in the tent where we had Mashujaas from every corner of this country, from every county. But the speech of the president, and this is from the Standard, I think it really misses the point. This headline misses the point, because we had the president speak for about, say, 30 minutes. I think the shortest speech I've had in quite some time. In fact, after he lined up many of those heroes, he was categorical that those are not the only ones. In fact, we had Jimmy Orengo in that list. If they don't note that we actually included Jimmy Orengo, who is serving today. We included Martha Karua. We included even that young man from, is it Narok?
Yeah, David
Ole Sankok. People who were not expected to be mentioned, but they could not fit in a 30-minute speech. I think we need to be fair. We think to be
the names couldn't.
There are so many.
I think let me say this honestly. Even Peter Kaluma is here. He will tell us the issue of whether you are mentioned in a speech. The president, there will be even the next Mashujaa Day. Has Raila Odinga and Jaramogi Oginga been mentioned before? Yes. They have even been honored by the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights when Jaoko was the chair, remember. Have they also been, institutions been named after them? Yes, including universities. So let us not politicize. You know, the other day, we have become so tribal, because this is a tribal language, to be very honest. Because of the people who are mentioned, they are Luos. And the president is a Kikuyu. Let us not go that direction. Because are there other Luos who have been mentioned there? Yes. So let us say this. Today, these ones are mentioned. Tomorrow, others will be mentioned. And I'm very happy that David Ole Sankok, because of his fight for people with disabilities, was mentioned. And that is a tribute to people with disabilities. I don't even want to imagine some people who are seated here and they think that they should also have been mentioned. How many people are waiting out there? So let us not try to politicize issues because of political figures. Did we hear somebody, for example, mention people like Monyo Oyaki, for example? Do we hear somebody mention like Mukaru Nganga? People who stood out, Ochela Gatmutai, who died in abject poverty because of standing for some values.
Yes.
So there will always be people to be mentioned. This is not the last Mashujaa Day. It's not a apocalypse.
All we are simply doing on this panel is looking at the headlines that we have. Yeah? So let it not be misconstrued to mean something else. Did you notice that?
We didn't even notice.
We did notice. Okay, as far as I'm concerned, I think this thing was very tribal. And the press tends to mislead Kenyans on some issues. Really, Jaramogi Odinga is somebody who's been mentioned, who's been honored, who's so many times. But that doesn't mean that he shouldn't have been mentioned. If the president didn't mention him, it's not a big issue. For me, he mentioned unsung heroes. David Ole Sankok was mentioned and we were all like, Allah, how did he pick that one and from where? You see? So he mentioned unsung heroes. He mentioned people, the Paralympians. He mentioned people who haven't been mentioned before. But that is not to say there was no space for Jaramogi Odinga. There was no space for Raila. He mentioned Orengo. I think he could have mentioned Raila. So, not to go tribal, but I think he could have mentioned Raila.
Yes, Bwana Kaluma.
Yes, you know, that is the